2023, we hear all the time how this is one of the best years in video games ever. At the same time, as someone who's beat around 40 games this year, which is my usual clip every year, I have a staggering amount of games that I truly abhorred this year. And if you look at the history of this channel, it's not like I'm playing more or less games than ever before. I'm at that same steady clip, but yet I usually do top 5 worst, most disappointing games of the year. And honestly, most times in those lists, it's maybe 1 or 2 games that are truly unplayable and god-awful, whereas the rest are personal opinions on disappointments. But when I was going to make my list for this year of the worst games that came out this year, I'm like, okay, what disappointed me? What didn't I like? And this list is filled from top to bottom with games that are just downright awful. And while I think that 2023 has delivered some real bangers, I think that it's been yin and yang. For everything good, you get something bad, right? And I guess that's balance in this world, right? To get the good and understand what good is, you gotta know what mid is. And as someone who reviews everything from something incredible to good to bad to awful, all in between, ladies and gentlemen, this is my top 10 worst games of 2023. Some of these were personal disappointments. I'll make sure I identify which. But when I was going through and I saw that Forspoken didn't even make my top 5 worst games of the year, that's when I had this epiphany and went, this year was pretty awful at times. So let's get into it. Again, my opinion. I'm looking forward to seeing your list down below. Fire away. With that, let's get into number 10. Ultimate Ninja Storm Connections is one of the biggest missed opportunities I've seen in a long while. Now, in the terms of a awful game, it's playable, it works, and when it comes to fighting, it's actually better than most Ultimate Ninja Storm games. But when it comes to, again, that opportunity the game had and what it was marketed as, I think it completely missed the mark. You see, it was about being this almost Naruto anthology, where you had from OG Naruto all the way up to Boruto, this entire story captured through Ultimate Ninja Storm's beautiful cutscenes, the beautiful fights, the massive roster. It felt like this was the collection. And especially since Ultimate Ninja Storm Legacy, a collection of Ultimate Ninja Storm 1, 2, 3, and 4 existed, I was wondering, okay, what is Connections gonna do to pull the thread? Instead, what we got in the story mode were screenshots of the anime with sometimes voiceovers, oftentimes not. They censored the blood in the game, so now the blood is black for whatever reason. Otherwise, I think they used AI for some of the voiceovers because there were voice actors and actresses who worked on this game on Twitter going, I don't remember recording this line, and some of it sounds awful. And for all you can say about Naruto, I love it. Naruto has a goated English voice cast that understands the job and how to capture these characters, and they always have. This felt ominous. It felt off, and the audio mixing all over the place is terrible, which made it feel less bombastic, less exciting to play. Even when you look side by side with some of the cutscenes like from Ultimate Ninja Storm 1, and that's a old game, right? Versus current Ultimate Ninja Storm, they didn't even do anything to make them better, and oftentimes are worse.
Did that wake you up?
So all it is just this flashy new roster with a handful of new characters rolling out this lazy timeline mode. And then there's this new Boruto story that's kind of meta about being in a video game world, but it's just recycled assets where you actually run around as Naruto from the Shippuden days instead. So it doesn't even focus on the Boruto cast. And again, feels like a missed opportunity. When you look at the fact that they're asking for the full price tag on this game, I just thought it was unacceptable. Not only was it a huge missed opportunity, but what is here is not up to the standards that CyberConnect 2 has set for themselves, especially with the Ultimate Ninja Storm series. Number 9. This one hurts, breaks my heart. AEW Fight Forever. Many of you don't know this. I'm a huge wrestling fan. Primarily, I watch a lot of AEW, although the product's like right now as I'm watching it, slipping a bit. WWE looking kind of nice across the fence there. Anyway, AEW Fight Forever, I was really excited about because much like AEW as a wrestling show, it signified this revolution that there can be 2 strong competitors in this industry and that it can't always just be WWE. And so to have that also in the video game space was exciting, especially when you looked at the roster of some of the new faces, your MJFs, your Sammy Guevara, you had your Darby Allins and so on and so forth, but then you also had familiar faces, Christian Cage, nowadays Edge. Like you had these awesome new talent and old talent mixing together, telling really fun stories. But AEW Fight Forever its Road to Elite career mode was disgustingly bad. It was so low effort and so low budget that I almost couldn't believe it that this was Yuke's, who originally made some of my favorite WWE games growing up, like WWE 13. Love that game. The idea that this is the same developer behind that, what happened during this career mode, I do not know, but it's all RNG, from lifting weights to increase your stats and sometimes risking an injury, to fighting on Rampage, sometimes fighting on Dynamite. The storylines make no sense. Like, one time I was teaming up with Adam Page in a tag team, Adam Page being one of my favorite wrestlers ever, and he ends up stealing my luggage, and so my guy super kicks him when we were the tag team champions, and I'm thinking like, okay, this is kind of funky, where's the story gonna go? And it ends and it starts a new season. Like, nothing in this game feels finished. And since the title is Fight Forever, and they said, oh, we're not going to do a game every single year like WWE does, probably because they can't afford it, I was thinking, okay, we're going to add more updates in, right? But they really didn't give this game as much support as I expected, where I thought like, hey, come Black Friday, maybe this will be an easy suggestion for people on sale. But no, like, AEW Fight Forever as not only a wrestling game, which was really janky and buggy when I had played it a lot, but also just the mode offerings. It's not a great wrestling game. It's not indicative of what the product is. It's missing some of the special match types. They finally added Stadium Stampede, which was nice, but it's missing so much of what makes AEW truly special. So it feels like just another wrestling game. And if I were to hand this to you and go, hey, as an AEW fan, I love this brand, try this out, you'd be like, what's so special about this? And that's what the game fails to capture beyond everything else. Number 8, Atomic Heart. Oh man, this review got me in hot water. A lot of people did not like that. I could not stand this game, but you can hate me all you want. At least you know one thing, Matty is true to his opinions. I found this game miserable to play. I found the combat balancing in particular trying its best to be a mixture of Doom and Far Cry, and missing the mark on that, where you were constantly getting knocked back. But more than anything, 2023 is the year of the annoying, talkative protagonist. And this game's protagonist drove me up a wall. Now, Atomic Heart has a really exciting and enticing world, no doubt about it. This idea of robots taking over, clearly a little bit of BioShock inspiration, clearly a little bit of like Prey in there. I think there are a lot of elements that are there that could be cool, but none of them are explored in a thorough enough manner to really justify me ever giving a damn about this game. When you smash that in with one of the most abrupt endings of the year, I think Atomic Heart was a complete miss for me on an enjoyment level. Now, on the success level, this game went on to have millions of players, millions of sales. People dug Atomic Heart. But for me, man, I just, I could not stand the protagonist from start to finish. Soured almost every mission I was on. I thought that the open world elements were a complete miss. The way that enemy hordes were placed, absolutely unbalanced and not fun to play. And as a first-person shooter, that is objective number one. And when you failed that, and then your character's annoying to listen to, and your story's not good, everything else falls apart from there, where Atomic Heart was one of those games where when I reviewed it, I went, this is one of the easiest verdicts I've come to. That was not a good time. Number 7. If you need to know how bad of a year this was at times, the fact that Forspoken is at number 7 tells you everything you need to know. Forspoken was precisely what we all feared going into the launch of the game. Every trailer we saw, that Marvel quippy humor.
Did I just do that?
Well, definitely with my assistance.
I did not just do that.
We did.
I just moved shit with my mind.
Oh, we were thinking, man, maybe it's just like a draft and they're going to change things based off the very loud feedback that was there. But if there's one game that symbolizes the failing upwards of video game writing, let it be Forspoken. AAA video game writing has been on the downturn for a long while, and I've called out many examples like that. One of my favorite examples is Gotham Knights, where somehow people continue to get gig after gig, even though they're writing some of the worst stories in games and they're polluting other studios. And Forspoken was not a good story at all. Not only because of the mythos I didn't think being captured all that well, but the insufferable relationship between the main protagonist and the bracelet, much like Atomic Heart, drove me up the wall. They could not stop talking. Yes, some people say there was a settings menu that you could turn all that off. If it's that bad where I have to shut people up, the developer has failed. I am not overlooking that. It needs to be called out. To many people, Forspoken is just a good game lost in a sea of incredible games in 2023, and it's misunderstood. For me, nope, I get it. And it's not just the writing, it is the gameplay once more. Some of the most boring boss encounters you can have, with a open world that can be fun to traverse thanks to the magic parkour, but that has nothing worthwhile to seek out. So not only did Forspoken leave me bored to tears, but you see some of the potential in it. And oftentimes that frustrates me more than a game that's downright horrendous, because you see where things could have been explored more, what they could have done to fix things more. But Forspoken just felt off from start to finish. And it never capitalized on any of its true potential, and any of its biggest mistakes were right there in your face throughout the entire game, thanks to that wonderful protagonist.
Destruction and corruption are forms of creation in themselves.
Wow. You sound like a serial killer.
What?
Destruction and corruption are beautiful forms of creation in themselves.
I don't sound like that.
You absolutely sound like that.
Oh, no, you absolutely sound like that. Yeah, see? Two can play at that game.
You're fucking stupid.
Number 6, easy one, Modern Warfare 3's campaign, okay? Campaign, hear me out, because zombies, not crazy about. Multiplayer, okay, you reuse the MW2 maps, but for me, when it comes to Modern Warfare 3's campaign, absolutely one of the most unacceptable pieces of the package I have ever seen in series history. It's clear as day this was meant to be DLC given the scale of it, but I understand in game development, asset reusage is extremely common whether you're aware of it or not. Some teams are really good at hiding it. In MW3's case, they reused Warzone from start to finish across zombies, across the campaign, and it made for one of the most laughable experiences I had this year, where when I sat down in the middle of an afternoon going, okay, let's check out the new COD campaign, I'll throw a couple of hours into it, I got some free time here, and I was done 3 hours later, no rushing. Oh my God, was I absolutely stunned at how little was here and how little was said. And the problem is the campaign never has enough time to breathe, where what they try to do is bring back a highlight reel of like, hey, remember no Russian from MW2? Like, we're going to try that again. But not understanding why that mission was so impactful, why that mission clicked, why it left an impact on the fan base. It wasn't just about what happened at the airport. It's why it happened. It's how it played into the larger plot. But MW3 never understands that, and they were never really given time to understand that. MW3 was made in about a year and change. And in that sense, you could argue it's impressive, but we gotta call a spade a spade. This game is horrible. And the biggest first-person shooting franchise should never be made in these conditions, and it should never come out as awful as MW3 did. Number 5, here we go. Redfall. It brought me no pleasure at all to absolutely eviscerate Arcane over this game. Absolutely not, because I have covered them for years, and I have covered Deathloop, I have covered Dishonored, I have covered Prey, and most of those games have received a lot of my praise. Redfall I was always skeptical of because of its multiplayer offering, but it brings me no pleasure that my most popular Arcane video after years of covering them is the one of me absolutely tearing them down. I'd love for their other games to get that same attention because they have been masters of the craft. And just like I said with Forspoken, where you see that potential and you know it could be more, Redfall is absolutely another one of those examples. But it's also just a sad situation where you look at what Arcane was and what they are now, and they are a shell of themselves as it stands. Now, I understand this comes from Arcane Austin, but they brought us the absolutely fantastic Prey and Prey Mooncrash, which is what I think a lot of Deathloop was built off of. So if you like Deathloop, check that out. But Redfall, on the other hand, man, an empty world, loot-driven, horrible level design, slideshow cutscenes, uninspired enemy design. It feels like all of the conventions, all of the mechanics, all the systems that made Arcane special were just left at the door, and they made something completely against their DNA, especially level design. One thing that Arcane could have done to easily overcome what we had seen here in Redfall is having levels that were open and fun to explore with multiple entrances, but you didn't even get that. Now, I know some people are going to come at me and go, oh, well, the game's been patched a couple of times. I've gone back throughout multiple videos, as you can see on the channel, and have tried out Redfall. I tried it with the 60 FPS patch. I even tried it when it got that quiet patch during Xbox's big showcase week. I tried it on multiple instances to give it as many chances as possible, because just like with Fallout 76, I want to like this game, because maybe I'm coping. I love the developer, love the team, and I want to see if there's something special about it. And that's what saddens me. There is next to nothing special about Redfall. I think the only unique quality it has is that this is a vampire game, and we don't get many of those. So that it's a big missed opportunity in that front is frustrating, but just the state this game is left in, it's broken AI, the character builds not having enough diversity to be fun enough to even warrant a co-op playthrough if you wanted to suffer through this. Redfall stings, man. This was easily the most disappointing game I had played in 2023. So you're thinking, okay, we're at number 4 now. That was the most disappointing game. What about the other bunch? Well, these are the worst of the worst. Every time I thought, that's it, that's the number 1 on the worst games of the year list, somehow this industry found a way to one-up itself. Number 4, Avatar Quest for Balance. Game Mill, we are going to talk quite a bit this video because your publishing efforts have been awful. But when it comes to Avatar Quest for Balance, this game is an absolute insult to the fan base. The fact that this show is so good that when it did absolutely nothing for years outside of the core show, and it had a massive resurgence on social media just by the merit of it being that good, you think it would just warrant an excellent video game one of these days. But somehow, all we've received for Avatar are weak, licensed games, and we did get that cool platinum game that was balanced horribly, but at least in New Game Plus, it was pretty sick. But when it comes to Avatar Quest for Balance, oh, I felt like I was right back in 2006 playing the first Avatar game on my PSP. I was like, this is fine for what it is, I guess. But it's funny that the PS2, PSP game is way better than what's brought to us here in 2023. The budget for this game, as we'll talk about with a lot of Game Mill games, is obviously tight. And the gameplay mechanics are absolutely lacking for what an Avatar game is. Just look at this boss fight with Prince Zuko, where it's just dodging a couple of fire blasts, slapping him upside the head a few times, rinse and repeat. Oh, but Matty, it's a kid's game. When I was a kid in the early 2000s, I'm telling you, we got way better games than these. Kids deserve better, and kids are smart enough to figure out games that are more complex if you give them the opportunity to, so sorry, I'm not taking that silly excuse. Avatar Quest for Balance was also downright broken, where the AI was like running into hazards as I was exploring the environment and killing themselves. The levels themselves were vacant of any life. The puzzles were a great opportunity to do some kind of Breath of the Wild creativity, mixing and matching the elements, doing something awesome, and they just did nothing. That's all this game is. IP hoarding, doing nothing meaningful with it, and cashing in on kids and parents who think that they're getting a really awesome Avatar game because it's Avatar. Like, this is an easy gift. So this holiday season, and if you watch this and you got your kid Avatar, return that shit ASAP. It's awful. Number 3. I thought this would be number 1. I really did. Lord of the Rings Gollum. All right, this is just a horrible situation, right? From the state of the game all the way to the apology being written by ChatGPT. This game, wow. Wow, this is the first wake-up call. You know, we were in that first half of the year, and you were seeing a lot of peak games coming out. You know, your Hi-Fi Rush, your Dead Space remake, and then you just get Lord of the Rings Gollum and Redfall in that same month. It's like, oh boy, can't escape these bad games too easily, can we? I don't know who greenlit this game in the first place, but it should never have happened ever. And I'm sorry that's tough to hear, but I don't know a single Lord of the Rings fan. As one myself, I'll speak for the fan base and say, none of us wanted a Gollum game. I get the idea was sort of this internal fight between your good and evil self, effectively, right? And maybe that would have been cool if it was fully fleshed out. But what you got here is one of the most atrocious looking games, like downright scary, borderline horror video games in the terms of visuals. When you play Gollum, I mean, it's about as fun as a Gollum game can be, right? But what does Gollum do? He crawls around and slinks around for like a couple of movies. I can't stand him. Like, he's important narratively, but like, who wants to play him? How did this ever get greenlit is beyond me. And when you look at the state of the alpha, maybe there you could have seen a shred of belief, like, okay, there's something here. But this game regressed artistically as well. It did the unthinkable. And my guess is because as this game got along this development cycle and they knew it was going to be a train wreck, people did not want their names attached to Gollum, and it had to release anyway. So as developers pulled out and said, don't put my name there, don't use my work, they had to replace it with placeholder stuff. Like when you look at some of the dialogue selection you can do, it's clear placeholder assets that you can find anywhere. The font even is different, but people didn't want their name attached to this game because it would ruin your career. They're like, yo, you worked on Gollum? We don't want you on our team. People would rather have taken the fall than have had their name attached to this game. That's my theory. And it is truly that bad. Number 2. We're back with Game Mill again. The Walking Dead Destinies. Oh, man. I love early seasons of The Walking Dead. One of my favorite stretches of television ever. Granted, I haven't watched much television in general, and so when you present to me a game that is about seasons 1 through 4, and the idea is that there can be alternate outcomes. For example, spoiler alert, by the way, if you haven't seen any of the early seasons of The Walking Dead, I'm going to spoil some of that now, so go check it out if you have yet to. But Shane can live, and Rick can be the one to die. Or Merle can be the one to join your group, and T-Dog can be the one who gets his hand handcuffed to a railing and shows up with the hook for a hand and everything like that. That type of stuff speaks to me. It's an awesome concept for a game, and Walking Dead Destinies clearly didn't have the time to flesh it out. Just like much of the Game Mail published titles this year. There was not enough time to fully develop the ideas and put something into it, and so what you're handed here as the consumer, as someone who spent $50 on this, is just an IP, a wolf in sheep's clothing, that is a broken, downright atrocity and an insult to the license itself. Much like I said with Avatar, Walking Dead is a huge fan base. People are probably lining up to buy a big AAA Walking Dead game, a true, genuine zombie game. People still care about zombies even if they're tired of it. It's just a known trope. People love these types of games. But the Walking Dead Destiny is just the amount of zombies that come your way and how the mechanics of the game can't support it makes it so frustrating to play. Because what will happen is your stamina will completely deplete anytime you try to hit a zombie, and they'll send like 6 at you. So what you'll do is you'll deplete your stamina, kill one zombie, run away, watch your stamina recharge, rinse and repeat over and over and over. It's mind-numbing. It's unbelievable it was released in this state, because at that point, those are number tweaks underneath the hood. They could have made at least that component a little bit better, but they didn't even do that. There are moments artistically I could appreciate what they were going for with the game, but when you started to stealth in a smoke cloud in the middle of the hospital, I was like, all right, yeah, this game did not have enough time. And I know I've said that about 2 Game Mill games. How do you know that, Matty? Well, let's get into number 1. The worst game of 2023. Skull Island: Rise of Kong. You know, it's funny, when I posted my video calling it the worst game of 2023, a lot of people went, didn't we already have one? It's like, yeah, there are so many candidates. These last 4 I've gone through could easily be anyone's worst games of the year because they are so broken, they are so soulless, they are so bad. Anyone could say that one of these 4 takes the cake. But for me, the reason Skull Island: Rise of Kong does is this game only had a year of development. This was confirmed in a story after the game had released that Game Mill gave them a tight budget, a tight deadline, and much like I said about some of these games on this list, like MW3, the fact that the game was made and completed in that timeline could be argued as mildly impressive. But we as consumers deserve way better, and Skull Island: Rise of Kong represents everything wrong with game publishing nowadays, where you have a company like Game Mill who is grabbing all of the popular IP, Kong, Avatar, Walking Dead, and making absolute garbage to sell to people who know no better and trying to make a ton of money off of them. They are the modern day LJN. For those of you who watched Angry Video Game Nerd, if you haven't, go do your research. They're that bad, and they continue to insult license after license. But this one in particular, what they sold you here is absolutely an alpha. The game can run, I put in quotes, run from start to finish, but everything there is surface level. There is no interaction. The graphics are horrible. I've seen games on the Game Boy Color that come across more appealing than what you have here in Skull Island Rise of Kong. The combat is the biggest whiff fest I have ever seen. Then they try to turn it into a Souls game when you start to do boss fights. It's unbelievable that this game, even for a company like Game Mill, it is unbelievable that Skull Island Rise of Kong was allowed to grace the market. And that's what's wrong with game publishing. The fact that this could even be considered as something worth selling, even if on day one it was off for, I think, 25% because they knew no one was going to buy this thing at full price, trying to manipulate the market and to be like, oh, I'll take a flyer on it. It doesn't look amazing, but it's on sale. That is some of the most disingenuous shit I have seen, and we need to push back on this. And I don't blame the developer Iguana Bee on this. You had 1 year. I know this isn't on you, but Game Mill, you got to do better. And I know you got it in you because one of my favorite games this year is Nick All-Star Brawl 2. And Nick All-Star Brawl 2, you could tell it has a lot to it. A lot of care was put into, a lot of fine tuning, a decent amount of budget. It got time and attention. So why can't these other games do so? Is it because your overall budget as a company is too small and you're trying to gather a war chest to invest every now and then? Here's my advice to you. Publish less games then. Be more selective. Stop hoarding these IP and in turn damaging them. Especially ones like I personally love, Avatar, The Walking Dead. Are you serious, man? Stop it. Skull Island Rise of Kong symbolizes everything wrong with game publishing today. And it's a game that you should avoid at all costs. Ladies and gentlemen, those are my top 10 worst games of 2023. I'm looking forward to seeing your list down below. Take excellent care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time around. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.